Oh, please leave me alone. I just want a big pizza. Please leave me alone. Oh, thank you for saving me, kitten. Good shot, men. If we keep this up, it will go all according to plan. Howdy gamers! Did you know the United States Civil War helped end whaling in the United States? Before I tell you how, quick disclaimer, I'm not a historian or journalist, so take what I say with a grain of salt. I'm just a cat with Google. Okay, for context, why did people even kill whales to begin with? Well, it's quite simple really. On top of whale bones being used as a status symbol from canes to corsets, it's what people use to get oil to burn from rendering all that blubber. You have to keep your lanterns lit somehow. And whaling was a major industry in the North, so when the Civil War started, it was an easy target for the Confederates to pick. Because the Confederates didn't want to conquer America and make evil America, they were hoping to achieve a white peace from dragging on the war as long as possible while making it unpopular as possible, hoping the people of the North would put pressure on the government to negotiate a ceasefire. But you may ask, how were the Confederates able to target US merchant ships? They didn't have a navy, an industry, and their ports were being blockaded by the Union. Because they got ships from the British. And to add more context on why the British weren't very happy with the United States in this point in history, let's look back into the past. On top of the War of 1812 being less than 50 years ago when the US Civil War started, the British government felt the United States was giving into mob rule a little bit by letting settlers pour into the Oregon territories, and were generally annoyed how American settlers encroached on British colonies in British Columbia. Someone should make a YouTube video about that. What made the situation worse was two things though. One was the Trent Affair, where the United States stopped and boarded a British ship to arrest Confederate diplomats headed to Europe. This angered the British, and on top of boarding their ships without their permission, they felt they were dictating who can and can't speak to the government by arresting the diplomats. In response to this, they sent 14,000 troops to Canada and approved the raising of the Canadian militia. The second thing was, the American South was a major supplier of cotton for the British textiles, so the Union blockade affected the businesses in the United Kingdom. So with this context, and the British wanting to remain neutral with a commitment to their ban on slavery, they still allowed British businesses to sell to the Confederates, with the British businesses sending gun shipments for cotton. But given their neutrality, they couldn't just have British shipyards hand the Confederate warships, because this would violate the neutrality. These businesses, however, got around this. Once they finished a steamship, they would sail it out to open waters, rename the ship to a Confederate one, then modify it for combat. It's not their fault the Confederates modified the ship for combat that they sold to them. And even mentioned before, the Confederates couldn't match the United States industry and navy, so they couldn't win direct combat. They also weren't looking to win the war, and steamships were way faster than merchant sailboats, which is when they started attacking the whaling ships. An interesting case of this was the CSS Shandana, led by Commander James Weddell, which sunk over 38 merchant ships from 1864 to 1865, which were mostly whaling ships. Listen, men, things may look bleak, but it's not over. We need to win this war for state rights. State rights to do what? Listen, my grocery bill is insane, inflation is insane, we have to do something. So will this fix the egg prices? Yes, now come on, we need to go murder civilians. We have to do this for state rights. We gotta go murder the civilians. The CSS Shandana traveled the whole globe actually, attacking merchant ships from the Atlantic, Indian Ocean, Pacific Ocean, and even Antarctica outside of Alaska, where a lot of American whaling ships operated. But when they were sinking over 20 whaling ships near Alaska, the Civil War was over for a month and Jefferson Davis was captured in May. James actually acquired a San Francisco newspaper after destroying one of these whaling ships, reporting the flight of the Confederate government 10 weeks ago prior, but it included Confederate President Davis's proclamation that the war would be carried over with renewed vigor. Listen, men, we're not going to fall for this liberal propaganda. I'm not going to let them stop me from saving a state's right to ensure that I get a paw job from an autistic puppy girl. I thought this was about inflation. Same thing. During August, James was actually sailing the Shandana to attack San Francisco, but was intercepted by the Liverpool, a British ship, and it was confirmed that the war had ended months ago. However, I actually left out some context, because 2 years before the Civil War started, the first successful oil well was built in Pennsylvania, lowering the price of oil. And with so many whaling ships destroyed, or being drafted and converted for the Union Navy, there just wasn't a profit incentive to rebuild the whaling industry in America. So, with the booming oil industry and the destruction that the war brought, US whaling faded into the pages of history. So what is the moral of today's story? Oh, I need a big pizza.